Well, I was working at a restaurant that was baking their own bread, and every morning I'd come in and I'd knead by hand, 2 5-kilo doughs. And I really found that quite magical. And it was one of my favourite jobs. David and I, we kind of shared a similar dream to have this little corner store bakery. That started in the winter of 2004, and that corner, the one in Devonshire and Bourke Street in Surry Hills, it was so easy to put the bread in the window there because it just felt like it always belonged there. And it was so easy to create this sort of vibe with these beautiful overflowing pastries and bread. And it was just a matter of making sure we were producing the best product we could. It's about the food, people keep coming back because there's things they want to eat. They're the sausage rolls and the pies, they're classic Australian dishes, more so than anything probably. And just following our technique that we've learnt, and we just tried to make something that you remembered from your childhood, but then you're coming back as a 30-year-old man or woman, and you bite into that and you can feel like that's your history almost. We keep rotating our range, which really keeps the bakers enthused, which is really important. And we keep learning at the same time. But there are things that we can never change. The white sourdough, we always have a wholemeal loaf on. At the moment we have a polenta sourdough, which is really good. We do a beer and barley bread, it's the best of both worlds, that one. My favourite bread, is the country rye at the moment. And it's basically just a mix of the white and the rye flour, and the rye flour gives it that sort of nutty edge. With all mixes, it's about the strength of the motor, because the motor drives the dough hook. 1200 watts is a really strong motor, and that's the one that Breville has. So say you were going to make a sourdough at home, the Bakery Boss Mixer would be perfect for that. So what we're going to make today is the country rye sourdough. Really all you need is flour, water and salt. The important thing to mention is the starter. You have to make sure that it's ripe. You can see in this starter that it's quite fluffy, and it almost looks like a sponge. And when you put it in your water, you can see that it's floating to the top, and that means it's ready, because that's the thing that it's going to make your sourdough rise. And always add your water and your starter first, and then your flours. Always just use a dough hook. And the great thing about this mixer is it's got a timer. So I'm going to set this for 3 minutes. Simple, really. The first mix is finished. You can see it's not quite a dough yet. This is called the window test, and we'll do this a couple of times throughout the process. As you can see, when I'm pulling it apart here, it's not really forming quite the translucent window. It's fragmenting there. And you would expect that because we've only just mixed it for 3 minutes. We're going to rest it for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to add the salt. So now it's been 20 minutes. We'll just do the window test again so you can get an idea of how you should be tracking. It's not falling apart as much as it had before. It's still going to crack a little bit, but you can see my fingers are almost translucent through that window. So now we're going to put it back in and we're going to mix it again. Here's our salt. Sprinkle it around, and on goes the dough hook again. I'm going to set it for 5 minutes this time, and away we go. Basically, after this mix, we let it sit for a couple of hours. So here's the dough after it's been bulk proofed. Now, if you look closely when your dough has been bulk proofed, you can see there's air in it. You can see the little bubbles, and when you press it down, it feels quite aerated too. So we just divide this into 3, and I think that would probably work best in a domestic oven. You do need a little bit of flour, so just sprinkle a little bit. Don't use too much. We're going to pre-shape into a round. The pre-shape technique is just moving your hands around like so, and the friction that creates around the edge pulls it under and up, so you end up with a ball like that. So we're going to cover up those loaves so they can rest for about 20 minutes. You need a little bit of flour on the bench, but not too much. And then you use this part of your hand, the heel, and you push it in and down. And it happens quite quickly. So there is the actual top of what the loaf is when it goes in the oven. But you want to make sure that you seal what's called the seam. If the seam's not properly closed, sometimes the air, when it's fully proofed, can burst out. You don't really want that. So you can almost see that I'm closing off that part there. So we use Banneton, the bakery. You have one of these, you would generally flour the outside. It gets that beautiful pattern. So you want the seam to be facing up, because when you come to flip it out, you're flipping it like that. So the top is at the bottom. Now I'm going to put this in the fridge overnight, ready to bake the next day. And now we have a loaf that's come out of the fridge and it's ready to bake. And when you're pressing it down, it's pushing back. So it's still got some elasticity in there. So now we're going to score or slash the loaf just before it goes into the oven. And that basically allows some of the air to escape. So this loaf we do like so. And you're going to bake a loaf of 700 grams for about 30 to 40 minutes at about 200 to 220. And just as we put the loaf into the oven, you want to add some steam to create the moisture in the air so the loaf can actually rise up. So now we're going to put it in the oven and we'll see how it goes. So this is our loaf that's been in the oven for about 35 minutes. You can see the pattern that we've formed in the banneton. You can see the slash that we've done. You can see it's nicely broken apart and it hasn't come apart too far and it's risen nicely into a nice round. So you can hear that that's done. And then now it's time to rip into it.